since the beginning of May, Taiwan has been put into more of a lockdown situation. We were at level 3, now down to level 2, but it's been 4 or 5 solid months of pretty harsh regulations and, of course, mandatory mask wearing.
Yeah, well, I gotta admit that. I mean, for Taiwan, for people in Taiwan, we have had a pretty comfortable 2020,
Yeah.
while every other countries are having this pandemic crisis out of control, out of hands. People in Taiwan, we were having a pretty good life. So people were getting comfortable until this May. All of a sudden, we have this outbreak. So people would be like, oh my God, this virus thing is still around. We have to put on our mask again. So all the social activities are suspended, and then no basketball, no park, no gym, no nothing. So people have to start relearning how to live their life again. So
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that because as the pandemic hit, Taiwan was kind of ahead of it. It was basically a normal life, and I remember golfing with my friends or playing hockey or going out hiking and running. We're like, wow, the rest of the world is. I can't imagine what that must be like. And now we are definitely imagining what it's like because we are living it, right now. So,
right.
in regards to that, before we get into the more human side of things. What have you been able to find some facts, some general facts of the whole mask wearing phenomenon? Like, do you know? I know Taiwan is a production based country. How many masks have been made since the start of the pandemic?
Well, I did find some interesting statistics about this online, and then a lot of these sources are mainly from news. So, for the purpose of our podcast, I have to say we have to assume the objectivity of this news because all the news they have their own political agenda. But for this, let's assume that they did their fact check. Okay, so back to your questions. Taiwanese government in the beginning of the pandemic, January 2020, we know that, the mask is going to be in great demand. So they put together a Taiwanese national mask team. So they boosted the production of the mask. I think the max production is 40 million a day. 40 million a day.
40 million masks a day were produced.
A day.
Not a month, a day.
A day.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. And here's another fact, like before pandemic,
Yeah.
Taiwanese people, we do have a habit of wearing masks because of the poor air quality sometimes, because for a lot of girls, it's because of cosmetic makeup issues. So Taiwanese people do have this habit of wearing a mask. And before pandemic, the demand of mask is 1.2 million or 1 million a day, and then a lot of those demand mainly come from the medical mask for the medical personnel.
So 1 million masks were being purchased daily before the pandemic.
Yes,
Just a normal life, right?
just normal life.
Yeah, it's obvious, when I first moved here a long time ago, Taiwanese people have no issue with wearing a mask if they have a cold or they don't feel well. Right. So that's part of the culture already. It's not a big deal. But jumping from 1 million a day to 43 million a day is quite incredible.
It is. I gotta say that even for us, we are surprised. We are surprised that we have this kind of capacity.
But there must have been a lot of concessions made by these factories and other places, right? They'd stop production for other things to focus on masks. And that's quite admirable if they're willing to put aside perhaps personal gain of a factory or whatever they're producing to help out with the pandemic.
All right. You gotta give it to those factories or those machineries companies. They got really big heart when they have put aside all their orders, and then they gear in all their factory capacity to meet the mask demands, because 2020, that was a very harsh year because that's when the pandemic hit. And so that's why we can boost all the mass production all the way to 40 millions. But then again, right now it's 2021. So the pandemic is not out of control. It's kind of managed. So what happens is we have this mask surplus in Taiwan. So guess what? I mean, we have around 0.8 billion surplus in Taiwan. 0.8 billion.
So 800 million masks surplus
in Taiwan.
And it's interesting because when I started thinking about masks, I had always assumed they were made of paper. They're not made of paper, right? What happens to these masks if 43 million are made a day? They're going to be thrown out. What's happening to these masks? Do you have any idea where they're going, or are they recycled? Are they thrown out? Are they burnt? What's happening to these masks?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting that you mentioned that. A lot of people assume that those, we're talking about surgical masks, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people assume that those surgical masks are made of paper, but actually the material that is mainly something like plastic. Okay, so the same material, or I shouldn't say same, but the material that used for plastic cups, plastic plates, plastic spoons are pretty much the same material that make the plastic mask. Okay, so we're talking about how do we deal with the mask trash. But the thing is, a lot of them, they are non-recyclable. According to the statistics by United Nations, it says that 75% of the mask trash and also the COVID-19 related medical waste are non-recyclable, and a lot of them are buried or dumped in the sea. So
wow, yeah. I mean, nobody wants to think about unrecyclable material and things being dumped in the ocean, but it's probably a little bit more palatable when those things had been used for stopping a pandemic, for something good. It's not like a plastic bag you get from a tea shop that you may or may not need. We needed masks. So I'm sure at some point this is going to be revisited, right? And maybe they're already thinking about ways to make recyclable masks, but it's definitely one of the uglier sides of mass production, and it was done for a good reason, but it's still there.
Man, you know what? If you can get an idea, how to recycle mask and then turn into something useful, valuable, that's $1 million idea. Because you know what?
$43 million idea.
Yeah, because you know what? According to the statistics, I mean, 6.9 billion masks trashed or thrown away per day worldwide. 6.9 billion. Okay, and in Taiwan alone, okay, we're talking about just Taiwan. In Taiwan alone, in 8 months, in 2020, okay, guess how many masks were thrown away?
I have no idea. It's got to be approaching 1 billion masks, I'm sure.
According to these statistics, it's that 2.9 billion masks were thrown away in 8 months in 2020. So that's how many masks, or that's the mass trash you're looking at. So if you can have if you can have an idea how to turn trash into gold, okay, this would be your opportunity. But I'm afraid that you're a little bit too late, because according to a research here, a university in Australia, okay, a university of technology, they did a research and then they come up with a technology to process this mask trash, okay, and then mix it with other material, and then they can pave road with this. According to their study, they can use 3 million masks to pave 1 kilometer two-lane road. So that would save tons of trash. So you're a little bit too late in this.
Yeah, I'm too late, but I do know that usually things that are involved in recycling or upcycling are expensive. So we don't know the costs of that. I mean, it sounds great that they've taken those masks and made paved roads, but we have no idea how much that costs. And hang on, so looking back at this too, if I was an anti-masker, which I'm not, I could take those statistics and just march them out and say, look, these masks don't work and they are being thrown away. 6.9 billion masks thrown away. I am sure someone is using those statistics to champion the anti-mask, brigade as well.
True. Yeah, you're right. I mean, what happens nowadays when we're talking about recycling, actually you have to spend more to recycle the waste Okay, so I guess you're right. I mean, that could be a good argument, but hey, we only have one Earth, right? So
Yeah, true. That's an issue for another podcast, right?